All right, well, we've been looking at state government, and we've talked about it in a generic sense across the country. But now let's take a few minutes and let's zero in on the state government of North Carolina. And we're first going to focus on North Carolina's legislature. Now, the North Carolina Constitution established a bicameral or two-house legislature. Bicameral should be a term that's familiar to you because it's the same thing that we have in the Congress of the United States. And we have both a House and a Senate and we call our legislature here in the state of North Carolina a General Assembly. And the General Assembly is responsible for making laws for the state. So our legislative branch here in North Carolina is called the General Assembly. And this tradition of a lawmaking body here in the state of North Carolina, made up of elected representatives, goes all the way back into even the colonial days. So way back in our history here in the state of North Carolina, we have had elected representatives as lawmakers. But again, our legislative body here in the state of North Carolina is called the General Assembly. Now, our Constitution, like what we have in the Constitution of the United States, has established three branches of government: a legislative, an executive, and a judicial branch. And again, in this lesson, we're focusing on this legislative branch. So it's the General Assembly. It's bicameral, as I have mentioned before. It has both a House of Representatives and a Senate, and its main role is to make the state's laws. And so it will make laws concerning things such as defining certain crimes and punishment. Other examples is it may establish new state programs, do things like build roads, and the lowering of raising and taxes. Legislative people love taxes. Boo. Now, the General Assembly cannot make laws by itself because the governor must sign an act of legislature before it becomes law. And we see the same thing that occurs in Congress. When Congress, the United States Congress passes a bill in both the House and the Senate, it's got to go to the president. Well, we see the same thing occurring here in the state of North Carolina. It's got to go to the governor. Now, the General Assembly does have a role in amending the state constitution. It can call for a convention to consider amendments. But not only that, it can propose amendments directly to state voters. Now, in either case, whether an amendment is being proposed from a convention or from the state legislature, the General Assembly, the voters must approve all amendments to the Constitution. So we have a direct voice when it comes to amending the Constitution through the ballot box. Now, what about citizens' influence in the North Carolina legislature? Well, now, if you recall back from what we talked about in state governments when we were looking at it in a generic sense, we talked about two different things there. One of those was an initiative, and an initiative is where citizens can propose laws. And the second was a referendum, where the citizens vote directly on whether to approve or disapprove a proposed law. Now, in the state of North Carolina, we do not have an initiative process. In other words, citizens cannot themselves propose laws. They can pass on ideas, as we'll discover here in a few minutes, to either members of the House of Representatives or members of the Senate, but they cannot propose the laws directly. But we do have referendums, and we can hold referendums on things like constitutional amendments, what we just mentioned before, that all voters have to approve constitutional amendments. Or another example of where we may see a referendum is where the states may borrow money, or allowing the states to borrow money. And North Carolina, like Congress, will also work with lobbyists, and lobbyists seek the support for interest groups. Now, let's go into the legislators themselves. So we got members of both the House of Representatives and the Senate, and both of them are elected for 2-year terms. Now, this is unlike Congress. This is a contrast, if you will, to Congress, where the House of Representatives are elected for 2-year terms, but the Senate, those members are elected for 6-year terms. But in the state of North Carolina, both our House of Representatives and our senators that belong to the General Assembly are elected for 2-year terms. Now, the House has 120 seats, where the Senate has 50 seats. To be a member of the House of Representatives, you must be at least 21 years old, which is actually pretty young. Not bad. Maybe one of you are going to be a member of the House of Representatives here in a half a dozen years or so. But a senator has to be at least 25 years old. Now, they both receive a modest salary and an allowance for expenses, and these positions of the House of Representatives and senator in the General Assembly are not considered full-time jobs. In fact, many of them are going to continue in their chosen careers while the legislature is not in session. And we're going to talk about here in a few moments as well exactly when the legislature is in session. We have regular sessions, we have short sessions, and then we can have special sessions. Now, the legislature is also organized into districts. So the seats, the 120 seats in the House, the 50 seats in the Senate, are apportioned, this is a key term, or divided into districts. Now, each district is to have roughly the same number of voters in each House and Senate district. The districts are reviewed and redistricted every 10 years as we get a new U.S. Census. So once the U.S. Census gives us what the population is in the state of North Carolina, then we're going to have a redistricting, or at least a review of the existing districts. Now, again, like Congress, we find that most of the legislatures belong to either one of the two primary political parties, that being the Republican Party or the Democratic Party. And the party that holds the most seats in either or both the House of Representatives or the Senate, that's known as the majority party. And the party with the fewer seats is known as the minority party. So we're seeing a lot of similarities, a lot of comparisons to our Congress and what we see in our state General Assembly. Now, again, we're going to also have leadership. So like the United States Congress, the North Carolina General Assembly also has leadership positions. In the Senate, the lieutenant governor, and the lieutenant governor here in the state is a man by the name of Dan Forrest. He serves as the president of the Senate, and he presides over the Senate during debates, but he can only vote in cases of a tie. And this is just like what we see with the Vice President of the United States in his role as President of the Senate in Congress. The Senate also elects another position, which is called the President Pro Tempore. This is, again, another similarity, another comparison with the Congress of the United States. And the Senate President Pro Tem, takes over the Senate President's duties or the Lieutenant Governor's duties when the Lieutenant Governor is absent. The majority party elects a majority leader, and the minority party will elect its own leader. Now, in the Senate, here in the General Assembly, the President Pro Tempore is a gentleman by the name of Phil Berger. Mr. Berger he represents his Senate district, covers parts of Guilford and Rockingham counties. Guilford County, principal city in Guilford County is Greensboro. But Mr. Berger himself is from Eden, North Carolina. And the majority leader in the Senate, a gentleman by the name of Harry Brown. His district covers portions of Jones and Oxford counties, including Jacksonville, which is where he's from. And then the minority leader in the Senate is a gentleman by the name of Dan Blue. His district is in Wake County. Of course, the principal city in Wake County is Raleigh, North Carolina. Now, in the House of Representatives, again, another similarity that we see. The top leader is called the Speaker of the House. The Speaker is elected by House members. He leads, or he or she leads the House debates. They can vote, unlike what we see with the President of the Senate, or the President pro tem, who can only vote in the case of a tie. And the Speaker also appoints representatives to committees. And again, the House also has majority and minority leaders. So our current Speaker of the House in the state of North Carolina is a gentleman by the name of Tim Moore. He is from Cleveland County, which is out in the western part of the state. And he is or he has office at least in the town of Kings Mountain, North Carolina. The majority leader is John R. Bell IV. His House district covers portions of Craven, Greene, Lenoir, and Wayne County. The principal city in Craven County is New Bern. Greene County, I guess, would probably be Snow Hill. Lenoir County is Kinston. Wayne County, Goldsboro. And the minority leader is Darren Jackson from Wake County. Now, both the majority parties in the House and the Senate in the North Carolina General Assembly at this moment in time are Republican, and so then the minority parties are both the House and the Senate are Democrats. Now, in Cumberland County, just in case you want to know, our House of Representatives members that are from Cumberland County are Marvin Lucas, Elmer Floyd, Billy Richardson, and John Soka. And in the Senate, we have two senators, Wesley Meredith and Ben Clark. Now, let's take a look at what happens there in the General Assembly. Of course, again, its main purpose is to make laws for the state. It meets in regular sessions that start every 2 years in January on odd-numbered years. So at the time that I'm shooting this video, we've just had an election in the year 2016, an even-number year. And so the regular session of this particular General Assembly started in January of 2017, and they will be meeting usually until sometime about midsummer. They try to adjourn around June 30th, although many times it tends to carry on a little bit longer than that. Now, in the even-numbered years, they meet in short session, but the short session really generally is only going to deal with where they may be making adjustments to the state budget. And from time to time, the governor may call for a special session or an extra session that we would call a special session. Now, let's go through the lawmaking process in the North Carolina Legislature or the General Assembly, and it follows a process much like what we see in Congress. So bills are drafted, and the ideas for these bills could come from anyone, citizens, interest groups, lawmakers. Any of those may have the idea for a bill, but only a lawmaker, a representative, or a senator can introduce a bill, and a bill can be introduced into either the House or the Senate. Now, after a bill has been introduced, it goes to committee. So that we have committees in the House, we have committees in the Senate, and those committees may even have subcommittees. And the job of a committee and a subcommittee is to study the bill. They will carry on debate. They may get recommendations from interested parties about its future. And if there is a lack of support in a bill in a committee, in other words, if a committee cannot approve the moving of a bill that has been introduced to its legislative body, either the House or the Senate, then that is considered to kill the bill. Kill the bill. Kill the bill. Kill the bill. Now, if a bill survives committee, it goes to the full House or Senate for debate, where there it can be amended. But when the debate ends, the bill is voted on. And if it is passed, it will go to the other house where the process is repeated. So if a bill has been introduced into the House, it goes through committee. It has gone through debate in the House and has been approved by the whole House. Then that particular bill will go to the Senate and vice versa, depending on which house the bill has been introduced. Now, if the bill is amended in one house, but not in the other, then we may need a conference committee. And once again, we're seeing another similarity to what we see the process into the U.S. Congress. So when both, and the conference committee then will try to reach some kind of consensus on the bill, and when they do, they pass an identical bill, which will then continue on its way to becoming law. Now, once it is passed both houses, then it goes to the governor's desk. Now, the governor can sign the bill, and if he does, it becomes a law. Or the governor can veto a bill. And again, another similarity. But if the governor vetoes the bill, it goes back to the House and to the Senate. And if both houses, by a 3/5 vote, or 60%, approve the bill again, or vote on it again, and they get a 60% in both the House and the Senate, the General Assembly can override the governor's veto, and then it will become law. All right, well, that's to give us an overview of the legislative body of the North Carolina Legislature, called the General Assembly. Next up, here in the state of North Carolina, we're going to take a look at the executive office, or the office of the governor. Carry on.